This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
And the topic is as such, that we know that worship is not limited to men. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He teaches us that the women happen to have the same sort of attachment to Allah from all angles as men do. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us this quite clearly in Surah Al-Ahzab, verse number 35, when He says, إِنَّ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَالْمُسْلِمَاتِ Indeed, Muslims, male Muslims, and also female Muslims as well. وَالْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ Indeed, male believing men, believing men, and also believing women as well. وَالْقَانِتِينَ وَالْقَانِتَاتِ and so forth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, along with every act of worship, He mentions the male, and then He also mentions the female as well. But it's interesting that we find that often the traditions that are related from the early Salaf, they happen to be traditions largely of men. So if I give you some names, for instance, you'd hear these names and you immediately recognize them. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, Sufyan al-Thawri, Abdullah ibn Mubarak, and so on and so forth. So even Abu Hanifa and all of these early great pious predecessors, which were of course wonderful people, but they all happen to be men. But the reality is, if we look into our tradition, we have a tradition of female worshippers as well, in the early generations and also in the later generations as well. If you look at your life today, you know that around you happen to be many women who are very devoted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, perhaps even more so than the males in your family, right? Maybe your mother is the one that is always sitting on the musalla, and she's the one praying her salawat regularly on time. She's the one encouraging everybody else in the family to do that. Maybe she's the one that's waking up for tahajjud, and nobody else has that same sort of zeal, right? Maybe it's your wife, maybe it's your daughter, maybe. So we see this sense of worship within women all around us till today. And same goes with the wisdom. Sometimes we often quote from our mothers, our females within our lives who are special, and we say, she was a very wise woman and she used to tell me A, B, and C, often from the mothers, right? Or the grandmothers, or the elderly women within the family. So if that's the case today, then it's only natural that it would have been the case also in the past as well, right? And when we do explore our tradition deeply, we do find that that is in fact the case. There are a number of very, very famous, prominent worshippers. I'm not talking over here about scholars. That's a different discussion. I'm specifically referring to those people who happen to be keen worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have, of course, this particular, we have males as well who happen to be very keen worshippers of Allah, Al-Hasan al-Basri, and the Nun al-Misri, and many other early scholars. So one of them happened to be a woman by the name of Rabi'a al-Adawiyah. Okay? Rabi'a al-Adawiyah. You must have heard this name, some of you at least. And this woman happened to be from the people of Al-Basrah. She was born in the year 100 and she died in the year 180. So she's very, very early. Of course, after the hijrah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we're in 1441. So she's, of course, very early, about 100 years after the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And many of the early Salaf, some of the names that I even mentioned to you already, they used to go back to her for her wisdom. They would go back to her for advice. They would go back and listen to her admonishment that she would make and say. One of them was a man by the name of Sufyan al-Thawri. Okay? Sufyan al-Thawri was a regular person. He would go to Rabi'a al-Adawiyah and he would ask her questions. He would go talk to her. He wanted to, whenever he would seek wisdom, she would be one of the people that he would go and seek that wisdom from. Right? Even though, by the way, Sufyan al-Thawri is actually older than Rabi'a. Okay? He's about 3 years older than Rabi'a, but even then, he would go to this woman who was actually younger than him in age, and he would go and seek advice from her. To a degree that one day, Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, he mentions that Sufyan al-Thawri took my hand. He held on to my hand and he took my hand. And he started to say to me, Murra bi ila al-mu'addiba. Take me to the mu'addiba. Mu'addiba means the one who will discipline, okay? In the past, they used to use the word mu'addib for teacher, basically. Because the teacher disciplines you, he teaches you, he gives you guidance and so on and so forth. So, commonly today, the word ustad is used, or also at times, not always, ustada as well. Sometimes the word ustad is used for male and female. But in the past, they had this tradition of at-ta'deeb, or al-mu'addiba, or al-mu'addib, okay? So Sufyan al-Thawri, as a man, who's a full-grown man, he's saying, take me to my mu'addiba. And normally this term is used for the teacher who teaches people within the young age, because that's where they need to be disciplined. Later on, you don't need that much discipline, you need information, right? So you need a mu'allim. You don't need a mu'addib. But he's saying, take me to the mu'addib, because every time he would meet her, he would feel inspired and he would feel touched. And then he said, التي لا أجدني أستريح إذا فارقتها. Take me to the mu'addiba, the one whom I don't ever feel at rest whenever I'm away from her. And that is Rabi'a al-Adawiyah. So Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, he says, when we got to the mu'addiba, when we got to Rabi'a al-Adawiyah, Sufyan, he raised his hands for dua and he said, Allahumma inni as'aluka as-salama. Oh Allah, I seek from you security. I seek for you to secure me. So in this dua, Rabi'a began to cry and weep into tears. And of course, Sufyan and Ja'far ibn Sulaiman, they're looking at her and they're saying, why are you crying? What's making you cry? All I said is, oh Allah, give us security. So she said, how do you dare even think of gaining security when you know that true security is when you leave off the dunya and disconnect yourself from the dunya? And you, O Sufyan, and Sufyan al-Thawri is one of the great early scholars from the Tabi'een, you, O Sufyan, happen to be completely indulged and occupied within the dunya. To this, Sufyan, of course, became strongly touched. And of course, Sufyan repeatedly tells us of the stories of how touched he was by Rabi'a al-Adawiyah. But this again is just one woman, right? There are many other. And Rabi'a al-Adawiyah, she was a very wise woman. So one of the wisdoms that we can take from her is in the following story. One day, Rabi'a walked by in Basra, that is. She's also known as Rabi'a al-Basriya. Okay? One day she walked by a man who was penalized for a crime that he had committed. Okay? So, now normally when people are penalized for a crime that they've been committed, and you may not be able to understand this completely except with some background information. Sometimes within the Islamic system, penalties are done publicly, so that people are aware that if you do such and such a crime, then such and such is the penalty. Okay? So people are seeing this person being penalized, so she walked by him and she said, may my father be ransom for that tongue of his, even though he's a sinner and he's being penalized. So people started to look at her and say, subhanallah, you're talking to a man who's being penalized before us and he's being humiliated, and here you are saying that may my father be ransom for him. This whole idea of may my brother be ransom, may my father be ransom, is just a way of is just a gesture within the Arabic language of respect and glorification of some capacity. So may my father be ransom for this individual who has committed a crime. Really? So she said, at least he used to say La ilaha illallah with that tongue. At least he used to say There is no God worthy of worship with that tongue. So what she's trying to say is, no matter how bad a person gets, at the end of the day, they have some degree of goodness within them. At least they say, La ilaha illallah. Right? And this is the wisdom that we need to also incorporate within our dealings with people as well. And what is that? That is that when Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal is prepared to accept people into Jannah, if they end up scoring within their scale of good deeds above a 50%, then how do we scold and rebuke and ridicule people if they end up scoring a low number but above 50%? You understand what I'm saying? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts people into Jannah so long as they get above 50%. Allah told us of this in the Quran. فَمَنْ ثَقُلَتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. Whoever his scale of good deeds happen to be higher, i.e. they weigh in the scale, when the scale of the good deeds and the bad deeds are being weighed, the good deeds outweigh the bad, then those are the people who will get salvation on the Day of Judgment. Then those are the people who will be saved on the Day of Judgment. So that means if a person scores above a 50% for Allah Azza wa Jal to enter him into Jannah, this is a pass. But for us, sometimes we end up ridiculing and rebuking and disdaining people just because of a slight mistake they've committed, although they may be completely right in everything else they do within their lives. So Rabi'ah sees this man being penalized, and she wants to remind people that yes, he's being penalized for one crime, but remember that he still says La ilaha illallah, and that is going to have some degree of, that will save him on the Day of Judgment. As the Prophet ﷺ told us about the people towards the end of the days, in which, by the way, some people may not be aware of salah. This is a hadith. They may not be aware of what salah is. They may not be aware of what siyam is. They may not be aware of some of the major obligations within the religion, but they will know La ilaha illallah. And as the Athar has it, تُنْجِيهِمْ مِنَ النَّارِ وَتُدْخِلُهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. That La ilaha illallah will save them from the fire, and it will enter them into Jannah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring us to Jannah. Allahumma ameen.
Ameen.
Ya Rabb. A man by the name of Salih al-Murri, he came to also Rabi'ah al-Adawiyah, and he said that, and he's saying a good comment which all of us will deem good, and he said, "Man akthara qar'a al-bab yuftahu lahu." Whoever knocks the door quite often, one day or another, someone will open that door for him, right? Whoever continuously knocks the door, one day or another, someone will open that door for him, right? So Rabi'ah, she took some time to ponder this, and then she said, Al-babu maftuh. She said that the door is actually open. You don't need to wait for it to open. What he's trying to say is, when you knock the door of Allah, Allah will open the door for you. Okay? You go and knock the door of Allah, you worship Allah again and again, you come back to Allah and you return to Allah, Allah will open that door. Rabi'ah says, no. You don't need to knock the door, it's already open. Al-babu maftuh, وَلَكِنَّ الشَّأْنَ فِي مَنْ يَرْغَبُ أَن يَدْخُلَهُ. The door is already open, but what matters is who wants to walk through that door. But the door is already there for you, it's open, and this is her wisdom, that a person, sometimes people need to be invited, right? So when you hear of a door already being closed and you have to knock it and regularly knock it, and then finally you will open, some people will already feel disinterested. They won't feel invited. So she says the door is already open, it's about who wants to walk through it now, right? This is one example of an early female worshipper who had wisdom as well. Another one, and there are many by the way, but we'll select some today and then some more tomorrow bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Another one is a woman by the name of Maryam al-Basriyah, also from Basra. And in fact, she lived during the time of Rabi'ah as well. All the people that I'll mention are all within the first 4 centuries. I won't go beyond that. So, another woman is by the name of Maryam al-Basriyah. She lived around the time of Rabi'ah as well. In fact, she used to be among the companions of Rabi'ah. Rabi'ah was a really famous figure. That's why I started off with this particular figure. And then she not only was a companion of her, she would also serve her and help her as well. And she would speak a lot about love of Allah, Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. One of the things she said is that, and subhanAllah, this type of power, sometimes you can see it within women, when you talk to them, women who are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said that, I've never ever thought about my rizq. مَا اهْتَمَمْتُ بِالرِّزْقِ. I've never thought of my rizq. I've never thought of my sustenance. I've never thought of my provision. And I've never felt tired in seeking that particular provision of mine. I take the means, but I don't, work too hard for it. Why? She said, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me in the Quran, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. In the heavens happen to be your rizq, your provision, and everything that you have been promised. And we have within the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that لَن تَمُوتَ نَفْسٌ حَتَّى تَسْتَكْمِلَ رِزْقَهَا. That a soul will never die until it ends up completing its rizq. Until it ends up, for all of the rizq that it deserves, it ends up using and usurping all of it. Okay? So Maryam, she recognized this. So she would take the means for rizq, but she would never, some people, subhanAllah, they end up occupying themselves completely with the means. Right? Now there is an opposite as well. Let me stop at this and talk about it with a little bit of detail. Okay? So, in the past, we used to have a group of people who had completely neglected the means. So they would sit in the masjid all day long, or they would sit in their musallayat, or their places of worship, or their homes even perhaps, and say, Allah has already decreed rizq for me, it's coming to me, I don't care to search for it. Okay? So because of that, the scholars would always tell us and remind us that Allah has decreed the rizq, but we have to take the means. Allah has guaranteed us some things, but we have to also take the means as well. In our times, it has become the exact opposite. Because we're living in a very strong materialistic culture, and everybody knows that they must take the means for everything, right? That's part and parcel of materialism, that, it's all about the means. Without empirical, everything has to be empirical. If it cannot be y equals mx plus b, it's not going to be. Alright? There is no divine intervention in anything. There is no decree, there's none of that. It's all means. Everything has to be, if I do this, I will get that. Alright? So sometimes, subhanAllah, in my opinion, some teachers, they make a mistake and they remind us of this problem, not recognizing the state in which we're living in. What am I trying to say? In the past, there was a problem of some people neglecting the means. So some scholars, they tried to cure this problem by saying that you have to take the means as well in order for you to attain whatever objective you're trying to attain. Now, if today everybody is all occupied in the means, and we still continue to remind them you have to take the means, are we curing the problem that people are going through? No. So we have to start reminding people that yes, there are asbab, but there is the musabbibul asbab. There is the one who created all the means as well. There is Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Okay? So she says, I never became occupied by my rizq, meaning completely occupied, or felt completely engrossed within this idea of seeking out my rizq, and never did I exhaust myself in search for it, because I knew that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, وَفِي السَّمَاءِ رِزْقُكُمْ وَمَا تُوعَدُونَ. So seek the means, but before you seek the means, seek the one who created the means as well. And that is Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Another woman who was from the early generations as well, she goes by the name of Mu'adha bint Abdullah al-Adawiyah. And she was also from the time of Rabi'ah as well. This woman, she was so shy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that she would find it difficult to raise her gaze to the heavens. Out of her sheer shyness. When we make dua, we look up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this way, and she would feel extremely shy, so she would not be able to raise her head. And she wouldn't eat in the morning time, meaning she would fast on a regular basis. That's what that means, okay? On a regular, we're all fasting today, so this is something that you can relate to. So she would regularly fast, and for the better part of the night, or most of the night, she wouldn't go to sleep, i.e., she would be doing qiyam. Now, in reality, most of us probably are not going to sleep these days. If you're coming for Taraweeh and you just get home to your bed, and before you know it, it's already suhoor time, right? So, you can kind of relate to this. She wouldn't sleep the night, and she wouldn't eat in the morning. So people said to her, you are hurting yourself. You don't sleep the night. The night is the time where your body needs the rest, and doctors will tell you that you need to make sure that before midnight you end up getting yourself some hours, and then after that you carry on with your sleep for your health to be in its optimal state. So people at that time also knew that through experiential evidence, like through their own personal experiences. And they said to her, أَضْرَرْتِ بِنَفْسِكِ, you're hurting yourself, right? So she said, no, what I've done is, I've delayed the task of one time to another time, okay? I've taken my sleep and I've kept it for the morning. So I go to sleep in the morning, and I've taken my food and I've placed it in the night. Because during the night time, she will of course not be fasting, so she's going to enjoy her food during that time. So this is what she did. By the way, some of these are personal choices. It doesn't mean that this is how you do it, okay? But I'm going to mention it just like that, uncensored. People have different choices they make. The point of this is to show the type of love that people had for their religion, women specifically, in early times. This doesn't mean that this is the best way of doing it, right? The Prophet ﷺ, he said that I marry and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I stand the night and I also sleep during the night. I fast and I also eat. And he mentioned a couple of different things which showed that he had a balanced life. And then he said, whoever leaves my sunnah is not from me. So what we're trying to say here is that the best sunnah is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But this definitely shows us how keen this woman was on the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? And subhanAllah, some such people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them a special state in that they're able to survive on very little amount of sleep, for instance, and very little amount of food. I know people personally who went on years on end without being severely physically harmed, with just 2 hours of sleep a night, 2 or 3 hours of sleep, even less sometimes. Personally, I know people who went like this for many years because they had the ability, they had the spiritual strength to be able to maintain that. So when I give this example, it doesn't mean that everybody has to implement it, but if there is someone who has the ability and who has this physical and spiritual strength, then these are examples for them as well, inshallah. Another woman is a woman by the name of Nusayyah bint Salman. And she was the wife of a man by the name of Yusuf ibn Asbat. Okay? And she used to say to her husband, now we know that sometimes, subhanallah, some husbands, they're masakeen because they end up becoming ATM machines. Subhanallah. Every single time they walk in, there's someone leeching off of them. Either the children or their women or someone else. And when they get to the masjid, everybody's just leeching. Right? So, this woman, subhanallah, she, instead of leeching, she reminded him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She said that, Allahu sa'iluka anni. Allah is going to ask you of me. Allah is going to ask you of me. La tut'imni illa halala. Do not feed me except from the halal. And do not ever extend your hand towards anything that has a doubt within it because of me. Right? Sometimes the man who has to be the breadwinner of the home, he realizes that I've tried everything and there's too many demands and there's too many needs. I have to maybe go towards something that has some doubts. Allah will forgive me because I have a family to feed. This woman is reminding her husband, and she's saying to me, do not come home to me with any food that is haram. Do not bring me except halal to this house. And do not, because of me, extend your hand to anything that happens to be even doubtful, let alone haram. Right? And this is the type of piety that we need within our women. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve them. Ameen.
Ameen, Ya Rabbi.
Another woman who was within this pious tradition as well is a woman by the name of Abdullah bint Khalid ibn Ma'dan. So we don't know her exact name, but she's known as Abdullah, right? And one of the statements that we have of her is that she said, لَوْ تَيَقَّنْتُ أَنَّ اللَّهَ تَعَالَى يُدْخِلُنِي الْجَنَّةِ مَزْدَدْتُ إِلَّا اجْتِهَادًا وَخِدْمَةً. If I knew of a certainty, if I knew of a surety that Allah Azza wa Jal will enter me into Jannah, I would not increase myself except in ijtihad. I would not increase myself except in more worship of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Except in exhausting myself even further for the worship of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And except in serving the causes of Allah. What does this mean? She's saying that if I was to be given a surety that I'm going to Jannah, somebody tells me definitely you are already in Jannah, all that you've done for Allah, O Abdullah, that's enough for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enter you into Jannah. You're already from the people of Jannah. She says, even if I were to be told of this, I would not cease to worship. I would rather continue to worship and become even more stronger within the worship of Allah. Why would that be? Because the thing is, we have a different maqam that we worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in. All of us, most of us I would say, worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because we want to go to Jannah. Which is great. Which is great. And this is mentioned in the Quran to be among the reasons why a person should worship Allah. But there are some people who worship Allah even after they've been guaranteed Jannah, knowing that A, Jannah is of different levels, B, knowing that Allah is deserving of worship. Allah is the most worthy of all of worship. Allah Himself is a being by His majesty, by His benevolence, by His glory, by Allah's supremacy, by His dominance, by His power. Allah is deserving of worship. By the sovereignty of Allah, Allah necessitates that we worship Him. If we recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly. So she's saying, even if I were to be given a ticket to Jannah, because I know Allah is the supreme, because I know Allah has all sovereignty, because I know the dominance of Allah and the dominion of Allah is above all other dominion, I will continue to worship Him just because He is He. Just because Allah is Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to understand Allah at this level. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Another woman from the early predecessors was a woman by the name of Sha'wana. And this is a name, sometimes you may hear of this name in some cultures, Sha'wana, right, with the ayn. So this is a very early usage of this name, Sha'wana. She was a very unique woman. She had a very melodious and beautiful voice. What she would do is she would admonish people, and her words really mattered and they counted, and people would listen to her words. And she would recite also the Quran for them as well, right? And people would visit her, the ascetic people, the worshippers, the people who wish to come closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, and the people who had soft hearts, they would go and visit this woman, right? And one of the instances that we find is that one day Sha'wana, she began to cry. She went into tears, right? Women, subhanAllah, have soft hearts. So when they hear, and if they are connected to Allah Azza wa Jal, sometimes they feel affected by some things in ways that men cannot be affected. And vice versa, men become affected by things that women cannot also be affected by in the same way. So this woman, she heard something that got her connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that moment, and she started to cry and she went into tears, right? To a degree that Abu Awni says she was crying so much that I felt like she's going to go blind, okay? Now again, as I said, that when we see these examples, some people will say, this example is not appropriate, this is not how the Prophet ﷺ was, etc. We say yes, but we know that not everyone has the same optimal level of everything as the Prophet. Okay? This is something very key to keep in mind. Everyone doesn't, most of us, all of us rather, we don't have the same level of optimal health, optimal psychological state, spiritual state, the balance of khawf and raja, just like the Prophet ﷺ. So yes, we should always aspire to be like the Prophet ﷺ, but no, we should never disdain people who did these things, because Allah will still reward them for such gestures of their devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is something that she's going through emotionally, she's crying, she can't overcome it. It's not like she's faking her tears. Because some people will say, this is not from the sunnah of Rasulullah, and that's the end of it. Yes, we understand, the Prophet would cry, but within some composure. This is what happened. What can we do? This woman is crying, she wasn't able to manage herself. She's crying, and people said that we were afraid that she's going to go blind because of these tears. So when they said to her, try to stop yourself, you're going to go blind if you continue to cry. So she said that I am less fearful of the blindness of this world because of my tears than the blindness of the hereafter if I continue to have a heart which is hard. Okay? Because in the hereafter, Allah actually refers to the state in which some people who are impious, some people who are astray will be as blindness, because they will be blinded from the direction of Jannah. Okay? Allah refers to this as blindness as well, but it's a spiritual blindness. So she says, I'm less afraid of this blindness of this dunya than the blindness of the hereafter. So this is how she ended up overcoming this particular situation. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward her duly for her tears. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Because the Prophet told us of an eye which cries for the sake of Allah. Such an eye will not be punished by Allah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have a soft heart and an eye that tears for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, within measures which are beloved to Him. Allahumma ameen. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our fasts, inshaAllah, and that He rewards us duly for it, and that He allows us to stand the night in prayer and to complete the fast of this month as well. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een.
This audio is brought to you by Muslim Central. Please consider donating to help cover our running costs and future projects by visiting www.muslimcentral.com/donate.
Let's do this.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا كريم واشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي رب زدني علما رب زدني علما رب زدني علما اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. Alhamdulillah, we're carrying on with our two-part series on the wisdom of female worshippers. Wisdoms from the lives of female worshippers. And we left off with the life of Sha'wana. And I told you a little bit about Sha'wana. I'm going to repeat some things about Sha'wana because she's going to be coming up again with another person, inshaAllah ta'ala. So she was this woman that had a beautiful voice, and she was very melodious as well. She would admonish people. She would read for people. A lot of the ascetics, a lot of the worshippers, a lot of people who happen to be people who would be attempting to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such people would come and attend her gathering. Along with that, of course, she had much wisdom as well to offer as well. Her name again is Sha'wana. Now, we have a woman by the name of Kurdiya bint Amr. Okay? She actually was a servant for Sha'wana. Okay? Kurdiya bint Amr, she was among the people that would serve Sha'wana. Because again, she's a pious woman, she's known in society, and often people of piety, people of righteousness, people of nobility, people of status and stature within society, some people obviously look after their needs in some capacity. They take them around, they help them, and so on and so forth. So this woman, Kurdiya, she was a servant within some capacity for Sha'wana, and she said, one day I was sleeping next to Sha'wana, and Sha'wana, she basically came and she gave me a nudge. Okay? فَرَكَضَتْنِي. She came and she gave me a nudge with her leg. And she said, stand up, O Kurdiya. Why? She said, لَيْسَ هَذَا دَارَ النَّوْمِ. This is not the place, this is not the world in which you're going to be sleeping. There will be enough time to go to sleep once you get to your grave. Because in your grave, you're going to be lying down the whole time, and there will be enough time for you to sleep. So right now, wake up and do something. Wake up and pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wake up and spend your time wisely. Okay? So the lesson we can take from this is that we need to be moderate within our sleep as well. Okay? This doesn't mean you never go to sleep. Of course you have to go to sleep to rejuvenate your body, to recuperate, to get ready again for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But some people, subhanAllah, they just get involved in sleep until they forget the world. So you have people that are sometimes sleeping for 14 hours. You hear stories of people sometimes sleeping for 2 days directly, without a stop, and they forget what day they happen to be in. Such people, subhanAllah, will rarely accomplish something important within their lives, because they're not taking care of their times, and they don't have any value for this time. They don't have a goal for every single day. A person that has a goal, which is a daily goal, a weekly goal, a monthly goal, a yearly goal, he will make sure that he or she will make sure that every single day of theirs is counted. They know what they're doing tomorrow, and they know what they will be doing the day after, and they have a plan for every single day of theirs. For that reason, their sleep will be measured and gauged. Their time that they stay up will be measured and gauged as well. And just like that, Sha'wana is teaching her servant Kurdiya that this is not the time for you to consistently and constantly go to sleep. Rather, you should be considerate of what? You should be considerate of the fact that there's time to sleep and there's time to also stay up as well. Okay? And she said, someone asked her, and they said, what of the barakat, what of the blessings did you gain from your time serving Sha'wana? And she replied that since the day that I served her, the love for this dunya, it disappeared in my heart. When we meet people of righteousness, we become affected by their righteousness as well. So since Sha'wana was such a woman of piety and righteousness, naturally people that she would meet, she would leave an impact on their lives as well. So one of the impacts that she left on the life of Kurdiya is that she would say, I lost love in my heart for this dunya. And I never ever felt afraid about my rizq not coming towards me. And no one from the people of this dunya was ever raised in my eye. People, sometimes, they have different priorities. So those who prioritize the dunya, when they see the people of the dunya, they feel like this is what, of course they've prioritized it, so they feel impressed by that. So she says here, that when I saw her and the way she behaved and the nobility that she had and the way she was cultured and the way she carried herself, I became in love with the people of the akhirah, and I no longer felt impressed by the people of this dunya, ever, because I had no desire for it. And I never ever disdained thereafter any one of the Muslims ever. And this is very important, because sometimes one of the traps of the shaitan for the people who worship Allah is that some of them may end up disdaining some of the people, their fellow Muslims, who are perhaps not as regular in their worship of Allah. So they may look down upon other people who are not doing perhaps the same amount of adhkar or recital of the Qur'an, or the same amount of salawat, or the same amount of all of these things. So she said that I never ever disdained people, because she noticed in the life of Sha'wana that she also never ever disdained people as well. Another such woman is a woman by the name of Hafsa bint Sirin. And she's of course the sister of the famous Muhammad ibn Sirin. Right? And everybody knows Muhammad ibn Sirin for several reasons. So Hafsa bint Sirin was a woman also of piety, of devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and she was a woman who had also karamat as well. Okay? Now what does karamat mean? It means that there would be paranormal or extra normal matters that occurred in her life by the leave of Allah Azza wa Jal as an honor for her. Okay? So extra normal affairs occur at the hands of the prophets, and they're called mu'jizat, miracles. And they occur also at the hands of the pious people at times, not by their choice, but by Allah's choice for them. And these are known as karamat, as a means for them to be honored. Okay? And as Muslims, as Sunni Muslims, we believe in the karamat of al-awliya. We believe in these extra normal affairs occurring at the hands of the righteous people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Some people, they deny the existence of karamat. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we don't deny the existence of the karamat. We believe in the karamat of al-awliya. But we have to be keen on ensuring that they have been reported accurately and correctly. That's what we have to ensure. So this woman, and it is reported here, that she had a karama, an honor from Allah Azza wa Jal, in the form of an extra normal affair. What was that? She would light a lantern to pray at night, and she would stand praying, and then sometimes, subhanallah, the lantern would shut. Okay? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would allow the house to continue to illuminate by the leave of Allah, Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. Okay? All the way till the morning time, so that she can carry on with her worship. Okay? In fact, some of these karamat are such, and they've authentically been reported, that sometimes they may even be similar to that of the prophets as well. Okay? Sometimes they may be similar to that of the prophets as well, but again, they don't denote prophethood, because prophethood is in the following way. Something that is extra normal occurs at the hand of a prophet, and he makes the claim that I'm a prophet. So that extra normal affair verifies for the people that this person is in fact a prophet. So it's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show the people that the claim that he's making to prophethood is in fact a true claim, right? However, some people, they make a false claim to prophethood. So Allah may give them an extra normal affair, but opposite to what they're proclaiming. How so? So some of the false prophets during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and there were some false prophets, because when the Prophet made a claim to prophethood, other people thought that this is a way to gain leadership within society. So those who were seeking leadership, they also started to claim prophethood, some of them. So one of them who made such a claim, he, subhanallah, he wished to prove to people that he is in fact a prophet. So he said, I'm going to cure the hair of a person. Okay? So when he wiped his head on top of the person who was half bald, the hair, even the rest of the hair fell off. Because he was trying to gain a karama or a mu'jiza or something of that sort. But Allah Azza wa Jal gave him an ihana instead, a form of humiliation. Because he claimed that by wiping his hand on top of someone's head, the hair will retreat, right? So it actually it became worse as well. And that is of course an ihana. Another woman is a woman by the name of Lubaba al-Abida. Lubaba al-Abida, she used to say that I am shy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm so shy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I feel that once He's watching me, because of my shyness of Allah, I don't want to be caught doing anything except that which serves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't want to be seen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala except within the service of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. And what we learn from this is that al-muraqabah. We have to be considerate of the fact that Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal is constantly and consistently watching us. Okay? Every single move that you make within your life, Allah is there watching you. So if you keep that in mind, the way with which you behave and the things that you do and the choices that you make will be very different than the way they are right now. Because in your mind will be this idea that Allah is there looking down at you at every single moment. So every choice you make naturally will be different. I'll give you a micro example of this within your life that you can relate to perhaps. If you go to work, and at your work there is your direct manager is looking at you, and he's there, he's watching you, he's observing you. Okay? When you know that your direct manager happens to be observing you, the type of things that you will do and will not do will be a lot different than when you have the ease of him being away. Right? So when you realize that Allah is consistently watching you and overseeing all of your affairs and observing you, then naturally every single thing you do and the way you do it will be much different. Isn't that so? So this is what this woman, Lubaba, is telling us. Another woman is a woman by the name of Ubaidah. Ubaidah bint Abi Kilab. And she was also from the people of Basra. And she was a very, very intelligent woman. And she was very keen also on the worship of Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. In addition to that, she was a very good admonisher as well. And she used to say, whoever has good taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whoever has good taqwa and good knowledge of Allah, two things. He knows who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and he also has good taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be nothing more beloved to him than going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and arriving at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's and arriving at the meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, i.e. the hereafter. What does this mean? She's saying, if you have taqwa and if you have ma'rifah, if you have the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you also have knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there will be nothing more beloved to you than meeting Allah. Okay? Why? Why so and how so? Well, when you have knowledge of who Allah is, you know that Allah is Latif, He's kind. You know that Allah is Ra'uf. You know that Allah is Rahim. You know all of these names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that bring you closer to Him. You know that Allah is Al-Adl. Even if you've made mistakes, you know Allah is just. You know all of these things. Simultaneously, you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is quick to bring people to account. He's very severe in His account as well. But because of the fact that you know these names, you have tried your best to establish the consciousness of Allah Azza wa Jal within your life, then naturally, you will be keen to meet Allah because you know that you have avoided all of the things that necessitate punishment, and you've done all of the things that will likely lead to a good end. And Allah is the most just and the most kind and the most benevolent and the most merciful and the most compassionate and so forth. So because of that, there will be nothing more beloved to you than meeting Allah. In this life, everything that looks like something of luxury, you know the luxury that Allah will provide will be greater. Everything that looks like it's comfort, you know the comfort that Allah has in store for you will be greater. Everything that looks like ease, you know the ease that Allah will grant will always be greater. So because of that, you will wish to meet Allah Rabbul Izzati wal Jalal. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us His consciousness such that we feel prepared to meet Him. Allahumma ameen. Ya Rabb. Another woman is a woman by the name of Hind bint al-Muhallab. And she used to say that whenever you see the ni'mah, whenever you see the blessings, they are pouring down upon you. فَبَادِرُوهَا بِالشُّكْرِ. Then immediately be grateful for those blessings. Why? Because soon after the blessings leave, soon after, if you are not grateful to Allah Azza wa Jal, then perhaps these blessings may also leave as well. You know, they have a secret, and they say that there's a way to lock the ni'mah. Okay? Many a times when we are granted with a lot of blessings from Allah Azza wa Jal, immediately man thinks, what if one day I lose all of these things? Right? Today I've been granted a good job, a good car, I've been granted a good house, I've been granted all of the blessings of life. What if tomorrow I lose all of these things? So the ulama, they say, there's a way for you to ensure that you don't lose it and you lock that blessing in such that it doesn't leave. And that is by, and there's also, by the way, a way for you to let it go such that it doesn't remain with you and it leaves. كُفْرُ النَّعِيمِ جَالِبُ الزَّوَالِ وَالشُّكْرُ مِثْلُ الْقَيْدِ بِالْعِقَالِ. That whenever you are ungrateful of any of the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jal, then that will bring the blessing to an end. And when you are grateful of Allah's blessings, then that will unlock and that will chain and that will preserve the blessings for you, and it will, as if you have a knot that you're tying to it so that it doesn't leave you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to pour His blessings upon us. Allahumma ameen ya Rabb. Another woman is a woman by the name of Rabi'ah. We already spoke about Rabi'a al-Adawiyya. But this is another Rabi'a. Her name is Rabi'atu bintu Ismail. And she was the wife of a man by the name of Ahmad ibn Abi al-Hawari. Now, she was a very, very rich woman, okay? So this was a blessed man in that way that he got married to a very wealthy woman. So he didn't have to work all of his life. Rather, I was making a joke yesterday, or maybe this morning, about the man in the family from whom everybody leeches, but in this case it's the other way around. Rabi'a was very wealthy, so her husband was the one leeching from her, okay? And he was the one benefiting from her wealth. Subhanallah. So, but she was also a pious woman. And one of the du'as that she had, subhanallah, is that, oh Allah, you've given me so much wealth, so give me someone pious in my life so I may spend on him. Okay? Bring me someone, a man who is righteous, so he can do his things and he can do whatever khair he wants for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will use my wealth that I have to spend on him. And so Rabi'a, she said to Ahmad ibn Abi al-Hawari, her husband basically, and her husband and her friends, by the way, all of them used to benefit from her wealth. So she said, I used to make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that a person like yourself and like your friends, they benefit from my wealth, and I spend all of this money on them. So she ended up doing that. And the benefit that we can gain from this is that if you have wealth, then you should be generous to be able to spend it upon people, especially people of righteousness and people of good. Because when you do, then it will only help them continue, and it will only encourage good within society as well, right? And if you don't, then as Zuhair ibn Abi Sulma, a pre-Islamic poet, he said, وَمَنْ يَكُ ذَا فَضْلٍ فَيَبْخَلْ بِفَضْلِهِ, that whoever happens to be a person of money and a person of grace, a person of wealth, and he is very, very stingy with the wealth he has, then what's going to happen is people will leave him and people will find sufficiency elsewhere, and that person will always be blameworthy that he had khair but he didn't share. Okay? And this is true. Sometimes within the family you have a person who has a lot of goodness, a lot of khair, a lot of wealth, and there are people within the family who are poor and they need, and he knows they need, and she knows they need, and they may have so much money that it's enough for them and their families and 2 lifetimes maybe. But they're not willing to share because this is how some people happen to be. So in the backdrop, in the back burner, consistently and constantly, such people are being blamed by people in society that, look, he has so much, or she has so much, that if he only shared, it would make our lives easier, but it wouldn't hurt him in the least, because Allah has granted him so much. So if you have been granted goodness, if you have been granted wealth, then make it a priority to look after the needs, especially of those people who happen to be around you, right? There's this phenomenon as well, that people sometimes have wealth and they think about donating and they think about spending on all of the people except those who happen to be the closest to them, right? Sometimes the closest to you, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your auntie, your cousin, those are people who are in sometimes serious need. But we end up maybe going to an event and donating $10,000, but we can't share a few hundred over here to help someone pay their bills. Right? Those are more worthy of your wealth. And this woman, she said, I wish I had someone in my life, meaning a husband or someone very close, upon whom I could spend this money. Another woman is a woman by the name of Fatima al-Naysaburiya, obviously from Khurasan. And this woman, subhanAllah, one of her students was a man by the name of Dhunnun al-Masri. She died in the year 223, okay, after the hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. So she's a very early person, and she had a student by the name of Dhunnun al-Masri. And the Nun al-Misri was known as the Shaykh of the people of Egypt. Okay? He was like the Shaykh Shuyukhi Ahli Misr. He was like the main scholar of the people of Egypt. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless the people of Egypt. Allahumma ameen. You see, the Prophet ﷺ has actually given us a will before he passed away to be kind to the people of Egypt. I don't know if many people are aware of this. He had given us a recommendation, a guidance or a guideline to be specifically kind to the people of Egypt. So, this man was among the great scholars of the people of Egypt. And he was not only a great scholar, but he was a student of many great scholars. I'm getting to something over here. He was a student of Imam Malik. He was a student of Fudayl ibn Iyad. He was a student of Sufyan. So some of the prominent tabi'een, this man happens to be a student of them. One day someone asked this man, he said that, who is the greatest person you've ever seen in your life? Who is the single greatest person you've ever seen in your life? And remember, he's met Imam Malik. Imam Malik is one of the 4 Imams. How much more greater do you want to get? He has met Fudayl ibn Iyad. For those of you who don't know Fudayl ibn Iyad, if you just type in my name on YouTube and you type in Fudayl ibn Iyad, I did an hour-long biography of Fudayl ibn Iyad. So you can listen to the life of Fudayl ibn Iyad. He's also a great early scholar. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be pleased with him. Allahumma ameen. So, he's met all of these great people, and he said, I have never in my life met anyone greater than a woman in Mecca by the name of Fatima al-Naysaburiya. Okay? Out of all of the scholars that he had met, some of whom happened to be the most prominent scholars of this ummah, and out of all of the righteous people that he had met, some of whom again were from the early generations, the most righteous of people ever, he said, I had never ever met anyone more greater in my eyes than a woman that I met in Mecca, who was known as Fatima al-Naysaburiya. And look at the concept that he refers to. And he said, she used to speak about the meanings of the Qur'an in a way that was amazing. Okay? Meaning she would do tafsir of the Qur'an, and it would be such amazing tafsir that a man like Nun al-Misri is shocked is amazed by the tafsir that this Fatima al-Naysaburiya would do. And she used to say that one day she actually advised the Nun al-Misri himself, who was a great Gnostic himself, and she said that he asked her, give me advice, O Fatima. And they were in Bayt al-Maqdis at this time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala free Bayt al-Maqdis. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. So, she said to him, she advised him, she said, stick to honesty in all of your affairs. And be honest in your actions and also in your words as well. Why so? And she said that the reason for this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِذَا عَزَمَ الْأَمْرُ فَلَوْ صَدَقُوا اللَّهَ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. She said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, when the things become very difficult, i.e. the day of judgment arises, when that occurs, they will begin to feel that if only they were honest, it would have been better for them. Right? So basically she's saying honesty is the best policy. You have to always, in all of your affairs, stick to honesty. You see, honesty is very important in all of your affairs, my dear brothers and my dear sisters. If you're not dealing with an honest person, and if someone happens to be a dishonest person, then you can't have a conversation with them, you can't do business dealings with them, you can't feel comfortable in marriage with them, you can't feel comfortable in life with them, you can't live with them. Dishonesty ends up destroying everything. It destroys relationships, it severs businesses, it brings things down, it brings people down. It's a very dangerous state to be in. Even if you're wrong, just be honest about you're wrong. And that's better for you than for you to lie, because lying would bring about another wrong at the same time. I know at times being honest requires a little bit of courage, but that courage is required. You have to ensure that you have that level of discipline and courage to be able to just face the reality. If you've done something wrong, be honest about it. And that honesty will eventually lead to righteousness as well. As the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, إِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ. Indeed, honesty will guide you to goodness. Because you will feel shy every single time you're wrong. You honestly say, you know what, I was wrong. Eventually, as a human being, naturally you'll feel, maybe I should start being right so I don't have to always say this. But if you cover it up with a lie every single time, you will never have to face the problems that you're placing yourself into. But if you're honest, then one day or another it will come to you and it will occur to you that let's leave these problems because of which I have to tell truths which are bitter. Let me just do things right so that every truth that I tell is a good truth. Right? So, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الصِّدْقَ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْبِرِّ وَإِنَّ الْبِرَّ يَهْدِي إِلَى الْجَنَّةِ. And righteousness, which was brought to you by truth, it ends up leading you also to Jannah as well. And that's why she guided him to become truthful in all of his affairs, including what he says and including what he does as well. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant this honesty. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbi. You see, my dear brothers, there was a woman also by the name of Bahriya. Actually, that was her title. She was known as Bahriya. And one of the advices that this woman by the name of Bahriya had given is an advice related to desires. She said, if the heart ends up leaving desires, then and only then will the heart feel connected to knowledge and also connected to following that knowledge. Right? You see, knowledge at times will guide you to things which go against your desires. And if your heart is full of desires, then obviously you will feel averse to information. Okay? Information that is telling you to go against your desires, you won't feel interested in hearing it. You will naturally feel averse by it. So in order for you to feel encouraged, in order for you to feel enticed by information, then you have to disconnect yourself from desires. Okay? So that's why she said that when the heart leaves desires, that's when it starts to love knowledge. Because knowledge will lead you to things, knowledge will guide you to things that perhaps your desires repel. And perhaps you feel averse to because of your desires. Once you delete the desires as much as possible, then you will feel more interested in information. And when you do, then you will feel more interested in following that information as well. So when you come to the Qur'an, you have to come in a state in which you attempt to overcome your internal desires. So you don't take your desires and make them overcome the meanings of the Qur'an, and make them supersede the meanings of the Qur'an and the Sunnah, of course. Rather, you delete your desires and allow the meanings within the Qur'an and the Sunnah to overcome and supersede you, such that they bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and closer also to actions as well. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us good knowledge, and also the ability to act by that knowledge. Allahumma ameen ya Rabbi. Allahumma ameen. There was another woman by the name of Unaysa. And if for those of you who were here yesterday, you remember I spoke about Mu'adha al-Adawiyya. So this woman, she was among the friends of Mu'adha al-Adawiyya. Her name was Unaysa bint Amr. And she used to say, and she had she was not just a friend of Mu'adha, of course, she was also a servant of Mu'adha as well. And she would help her out in her day-to-day matters and affairs. And she had a very, very beautiful saying, in which she would say three things, okay? If there's not much that you've learned, inshallah, in these lessons, I want you to remember this one saying. It's a very powerful saying, and it will help you, inshallah ta'ala, correct a lot of your affairs, bi'idhnillah. It'll help us all, bi'idhnillah. She would say that in order for any action for any action to be accepted, you have to have three things. We can summarize them into two, but I'll say it as she did. The first thing is that you have to be sincere within that action. Every single action that you do, you need to ensure that you're sincerely doing it for Allah Rabbul Izzati wa Jalal. You have to ensure that that action is purely for Allah's sake and not for the sake of anyone else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the second thing that she said is that you have to also ensure that that action is in fact a correct action. Because you can be sincere all you want, but the action is wrong. Right? Maybe you have sincerity, you're sincerely doing something, but you're doing it all wrong. I'll give you a simple example. Perhaps you are very sincere and devoted when it comes to your prayer. So you're praying on a daily basis and you're doing it. But the reality is, you don't know actually how to pray. You don't know that you have to read Surah Al-Fatiha in the Salah, without which there is no Salah, as the Prophet said, "La salata illa bi Fatihatil Kitab." There is no prayer except if you read Fatihatul Kitab, Surah Al-Fatiha. So, there's a problem there. You don't know that when you're praying your salah, you have to ensure that the wudu has been perfected as well, and has been completed, and at least the obligatory actions within your wudu have been completed and done right. So, without this, without the correctness as well, and the accuracy of your action will not be considered acceptable. So she said the first thing is, you have to have ikhlas. The second thing is, you have to have as-sawab. And the third thing is, you have to ensure that that action also is in accordance to the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what did she say, and what's her name? I want you to memorize this so you actually remember it as a practical way of advice, inshaAllah ta'ala, within your life. From this beautiful woman by the name of Unaysa.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I just want to make you aware of one emergency situation in the back there. There's a blockage on the whole building, washrooms and all lines of water, because there is something going on with the city line. It's not our problem, but I know it's our kids who are putting the napkins after using the washrooms. They are putting it and they are not flushing it into the washrooms. Anyway, the people are here in the back area and the ladies' interest. I want you to keep the kids, especially ladies, away from that area, and we're not gonna use the washrooms for a while until they fix the problem. So please, I want your cooperation. Keep the kids away from that area, because it's very important, and there's a heavy equipment and it's dangerous and could be risky for the kids. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Sorry for the interruption.
Okay, so we were saying that there are three things that she said, Unaysa bint Amr. I want you to memorize them. The first thing is that al-ikhlas. Everybody say it out loud with me so you remember it, inshallah. Al-ikhlas.
Al-ikhlas.
So sincerity. As-sawab.
As-sawab.
Correctness. And as-sunnah.
As-sunnah.
Okay? So this is Unaysa. It's a practical tip within your life, and I'm going to leave you off with one last thing, inshallah, and then we can start getting prepared, inshallah ta'ala, for our iftar. A woman by the name of Aswad bint Zayd al-Adawiyya. She was among the people who were young children when Mu'adha al-Adawiyya was around, about whom we spoke yesterday. And she was not only among the children at the time of Mu'adha, but she was actually a child that Mu'adha herself had nursed as well. So she was basically a daughter to Mu'adha, but because of the fact that she nursed him. Right? We know that that ends up making the wet nurse like a mother to the child, right? So she would say, Mu'adha would say to al-Aswad, she would say to her, that do not pollute the milk that I had placed within you. She would say to her, do not pollute the milk that I had placed within you through nursing you by eating something that is haram. Because when I was nursing you, I would try my best to ensure that I only eat halal. I only eat halal. Throughout my time, I would ensure as best as I could that every single morsel that goes into my body is halal, and there's no doubts within any morsel that goes within my body. So try your best, O Aswad, to not eat except that which is halal, and if you do so, maybe then you will get tawfiq from Allah Azza wa Jal, then you will get the ability to do righteous deeds. And what we can take from this is the following, that if we want to raise our kids to be people of righteousness and piety, and if we want to raise our kids to be people of greatness, then we have to ensure that everything we put within their mouths happens to be halal, and we don't extend our hands to haram simply to feed our children or to give them luxuries of life or so on and so forth. Rather, we know in many of the reports and many of the stories that the reason why many of the great predecessors, they became so great was because of the fact that their parents were very keen on ensuring that they eat only halal, nothing but halal, and nothing that has doubts within their food. In fact, some of the scholars of the past wouldn't eat from their own city. Imagine that. Imam al-Nawawi was known for that. He would not eat from the crops of Damascus. He would eat from outside because he would think that the crops within Damascus have been polluted with some degree of haram within them, meaning the money that was being circulated. So he would eat from food that would be delivered to him from outside of the city. Why? Because he didn't want a single thing to go in his body that would be considered haram, such that it would actually affect his ilm and his knowledge and his righteousness and his piety and his closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you want your children to grow great, then make sure you ensure that you give them halal and nothing but halal. Jazakumullahu khairan. And inshallah we have a lot of halal food over there, so go and enjoy. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.